few moments from now, we would begin with our first session. It is the Fireside chat, and we request all our guests who are outside the hall to kindly join us inside. Once again, requesting everyone to kindly join us inside the hall for us to begin with our first session, which is the Fireside chat. And I also request all our members present inside the hall to kindly be seated with the electronic gadgets, essentially the mobile phones, on silent mode from now onwards. Thank you so much for your kind attention. To begin with our session, may I request everyone who is outside the hall to kindly join us inside. We'll take exactly a few more minutes to begin with our session. May I request everyone to kindly be seated with their electronic gadgets on silent mode from now onwards. Thank you for your kind attention.
And ensure water security. Developing tribal regions through
I'll begin with our first session, a session that we are all looking forward to, the Fireside Chat. May I quickly request all our guests, our special invitees, our members, to kindly be seated with their electronic gadgets on silent mode. And may I request the organizing team members to kindly make sure the exit doors of the hall are shut. This is just to ensure an uninterrupted flow of the event. Namaskar, good morning, Swagatam. Ladies and gentlemen, to the day 2 of Sa-Dhan's National Conference on Inclusive Growth, with its theme as Driving Sustainable Development Through Inclusive Finance. After a very impactful day 1 of the conference, ladies and gentlemen, we had discussions around the transformative potential of sustainable finance and its role in nation building. We now welcome you all to day 2, and we look forward to yet another very fruitful, impactful, and very interactive day. Ladies and gentlemen, today we begin our day with a fireside chat, which we all are looking forward to. And this discussion would be around the role of microfinance in the journey towards Viksit Bharat. May I request you all to kindly join me as I invite our distinguished guest for this session. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together as I invite on stage our honorable guest, Secretary, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, Government of India, Dr. Saurabh Garg. Warm welcome to you, sir. With a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. We also welcome Honorable Non-Executive Chairman, Punjab and Sindh Bank, and CEO and Founder Director, EGROW Foundation, Dr. Charan Singh. Very warm welcome to you, sir. Absolutely a privilege for us. As part of the Sa-Dhan tradition, we would like to welcome our guest with a planter. And may I request ED CEO Sa-Dhan, Mr. G.G. Maman, to kindly join us onto the stage and present a planter to our honorable guests and welcome them to day 2 of this conference and essentially to this fireside chat. With, again, a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. We brighten this hall with our smiles and a huge round of applause. Warm welcome to you, sir. Before I request our honorable guests to kindly take over, may I say a few lines in their introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, Secretary of Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, Government of India, Dr. Saurabh Garg, was previously serving as Secretary, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, focusing on policies for vulnerable communities. As the Chief Executive of Unique Identification Authority of India, he led the team for strengthening the technology stack of the Aadhaar ecosystem. His past roles includes position in the Ministry of Finance, Government of India, and he played a key role in the direct benefit transfer program and foreign direct investment policy of formulation. With those words, warm welcome once again, sir. May I say a few words about Dr. Charan Singh. Ladies and gentlemen, as mentioned, along with being the CEO and the founder, director, EGROW Foundation, and the non-executive chairman, Punjab and Sindh Bank, Dr. Charan Singh is also the non-executive. He also continues to pursue his academic interest by regularly teaching courses on macro, monetary policy, global economics, and contemporary issues on Indian economy at IIM Vishakhapatnam and IIM Rohtak. Earlier, he was the RBI Chair Professor of Economics at the prestigious Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, India, and Senior Economist at the IMF, Washington, D.C., and also a research director at the RBI, where he joined as a research officer in the economics department in 1984. His expertise is on fiscal policy, monetary policy, financial markets, and he has worked extensively on issues like external trade, international reserves, global hunger index, old age pension, other development issues related to Indian growth and public policies. With those words, once again, we welcome our distinguished guest. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a fireside chat, and the discussion would be around the role of microfinance in the journey towards Viksit Bharat. With those words, may I request Dr. Charan Singh to kindly take over.
Hello. Thank you very much. First of all, I must thank Mr. Gigi Memon for inviting me, and then I'm so honored to have this fireside chat with Dr. Garg and organizing this whole event, which is so important in the economic history of our country. I think we have a short time because we have to wind up by about 10:20, so I'll go straight into the subject. Dr. Garg, as you would have seen, we have been planning in our country from 1951. And actually, if you look at the cooperative story of our country from 1903, we have been thinking about the rural areas and taking everyone along with us. The bank that I chair, Punjab and Sindh Bank, this was established in 1908 with the purpose of extending loans to downtrodden and people who were excluded from banking. And if you look at the history of our country, the nationalization of State Bank of India and then the formal nationalization of commercial banks in 1969 and 1980, each one of them had this focus on financial inclusion. Actually, the argument given in nationalization was we want to extend banking into the rural sectors. It's sometimes around 2008 when we did a study in the Reserve Bank, we realized that not more than 50% of Indians have a bank account. Actually, the first study which was done internally, we found 33%. And when Dr. C. Rangarajan was the former governor of the RBI, he was brought in and he did a study where he took all the bank accounts, including cooperatives. 50% of the country only had bank accounts. We have gone a long way, and today our Prime Minister is talking about Viksit Bharat. We have also gone for the Jan Dhan accounts, and we have also gone for the Jam Trinity. I was wondering, with the vast experience that you have and exposure that you have in your PhD, as well as in your previous assignment and the current assignment, how would you think about microfinance playing a role in this transformation of our country from where we were in 51 when we started planning to the Viksit Bharat which the Prime Minister is talking?
Thank you, Dr. Charan Singh. So just before I talk on Viksit Bharat and where we will go from here, I just want to also mention that recently we came out in the National Statistics Organization, we came out with the Household Consumption Expenditure Survey, which shows that in the last 10 years, the growth rate of the average monthly consumption, both in the rural areas and the urban areas, has expanded significantly. In fact, the average in urban areas is nearly 6,500 rupees per month, and in the rural areas now is nearly around 4,000, 3,800 rupees a month. And what is also more significant is that for the first time, the expenditure on food has gone down below 50%. It was earlier 54 in 2011-12, it's now average 45, 46. And interestingly, the expenditure on conveyance, transport has doubled to nearly 8%. I'm just mentioning this given that the growth rates have been terrific in the past decade, or even over the, if you look at it from 1950 onwards. For the next 25 years, 2047, there is the Viksit Bharat, and I'll just focus on 2 or 3 things which might be relevant for the microfinance community. Number one is that by 2047, it's expected that we will not have anyone in extreme poverty. And I think we should be, much before that, we should be reaching that target. And for example, the National Rural Livelihoods Mission, the Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana, NRLM, is one significant intervention which has led to more than 1.4 crore self-help groups. And out of that, 1.2 crore are bank-linked, and most of them are microfinance. So I'm sure that will be an area continued focus, and perhaps it will be much more in the National Urban Livelihood Mission, where right now the focus is, the numbers are much lower than the NRLM, and given the fact that more and more will be urbanized, so that would be a big focus area going forward. And obviously, we'll move forward from savings and all. Second, I just want to mention is on skilling, because that will be significant for empowering. Right now, around 32% of India is skilled. We want to reach the target of 100%. I think recently the Ministry of Skill Development has also allowed that model skill loan scheme where microfinance institutions can also participate. And this will also be relevant for increasing the female labor participation rate, especially in the urban areas, and I can talk a bit of that later. And the third thing which I just want to focus on is the fact that in Viksit Bharat, we are talking of universal access to water, electricity, high-speed broadband, banking, etc. Within that, green growth would be extremely relevant. Financing green initiatives like solar rooftops and things like that. So I'm just mentioning 3 aspects of Viksit Bharat, which I think given the momentum, we will be able to achieve it well in time, but would give a lot of opportunities for microfinance.
I agree with you, means the Viksit Bharat would, in a country like ours, we would assume that the per capita income would certainly be around $15,000. So abject poverty, severe poverty would have been done away with. And I also agree with you that in that situation, the grassroots institutions, microfinance, and you mentioned about the self-help groups. Today morning, I was interacting with the former chairman of NABARD, and he was telling me that the self-help groups that have come into existence, he was the one formulating those policies in NABARD. Me too, when I was working in the Reserve Bank of India and we were looking at financial inclusion, the self-help groups have come out in a very big way, effectively because these are generally female-led and female-populated. So the self-help groups also create sort of a women-led entrepreneurship. In the Viksit Bharat, I would also think that there would be participation from every nook and corner of the country. And the IMF has come out with a very recent study. They've come out with a series of studies, but there's a very recent study where they emphasize that the women, if they enter into the labor force, the GDP of the country automatically increases by about 25%. So we are growing at 8% and we get a better female labor force participation. We'll start growing at 10%, something where I think the potential is. What would be, and you just mentioned about the fact that many of these self-help groups do encourage women-led businesses. Would you like to elaborate on it and share with us in this Viksit Bharat and these efforts which we are doing now, how women-led businesses will take a big lead, and of course, it will also help us close the gender gap which is in our country.
So women, I think, as the Honorable Prime Minister has also mentioned, are a very key pillar of Viksit Bharat, and for multiple reasons. Apart from women's empowerment, it increases self-esteem, enhancement, and ultimately it leads to better education, better health, etc. If you look at the labor force participation rates, in rural India, female labor participation has reached around 47%. That's the latest periodic labor force survey data. And in urban areas, it's still at 28%. But in the rural areas, the gap has reduced, and one of the major reasons is the self-help group movement. So going forward, that would continue to be a focus. But one very positive aspect is the fact that when we did this annual survey of unincorporated sector enterprises, ASUS, around 24% of the proprietary establishments were run by women. And what is even more startling is that 55% of the unincorporated establishments in the manufacturing sector are run by women. So the fact remains that there is a lot of women entrepreneurship, and the focus going forward would continue to be on that. And apart from NRLM, that I already mentioned, if you look at even the figures in PM Mudra, which I'm sure many out here would be familiar, the share of women borrowers is 71%. And the total disbursed sanction around is 4.5 lakh crores to women alone. And as you mentioned, that the goal is to ensure that the women and female and male labor participation gap reduces. In the rural areas, it's happening much faster. And I think going forward, urban areas would be in focus, and that's why I mentioned about NULM being something very important that we have to look forward going forward.
I agree with you. Even if you look in the gathering here today, I see more women. When we go for a banking industry gathering, I hardly see any women. And if you look at the constitution of the boards of commercial banks, public and private, and you find very less women participating in the top rung. But in microfinance initiatives, I always find women are playing a very prominent role. I myself was part of NABARD Financial Services and used to go around the countryside to see how it's happening. And I was, and Mr. Gigi was the MD there. So I've been there for about 5 years. I've also gone and visited the self-help groups. They're very, very, very positive. And the way they're engaging women, I think it's absolutely in the right direction. And my feeling is, once we are in the path of Viksit Bharat, the per capita incomes are rising, the participation of women at every level, especially at the grassroots rural level, you already mentioned that they're doing better than the urban. But my feeling is even in the urban areas, with this direction in which we are, there's going to be improvement.
Absolutely.
I'm looking forward to the next survey, which will show us that improvement. Going forward, when we started the microfinance drive, and of course, the Nobel laureate from Bangladesh had established some norms, we did not just follow the traditional pattern. Not that we just opened an account and that is where we left it. I think we brought in lots of financial services also into the fold. I think that is where the innovative efforts, initiatives by our country played a very prominent role. The vision, the thinking. Would you, being in the government, have some thoughts to share as to how did we expand the basic infrastructure of opening account in now providing wider financial services through this?
Yeah. So obviously, as you mentioned that banking penetration 15, 20 years back, the number of accounts 30%, 50%. So obviously 54 crore accounts have been opened under PM Jan-Dhan Yojana. More than 50% are women. The average account, amount in the account is somewhere around 4,500 rupees is the amount which is there in each of the Jan-Dhan accounts. So obviously Jan-Dhan was a major focus, but I think we need to give credit to a couple of other things also. And one is Aadhaar. I have been CEO of UIDAI, and I can testify the kind of technology backbone that we have, that the number of transactions on per day has crossed 10 crore or 11 crore in terms of authentications. So that's been obviously significant. And not only Aadhaar, but the entire investment in the digital public infrastructure. I think DPI, that focus has really paid off in this. What has also helped is, I think, the number of microfinance institutions and the NBFCs that have grown. We have more than nearly 10,000 NBFCs now, and I think they are the ones who have led to the deepening of the financial sector, as also the fact that now we have the financial banking correspondents. So that you have the 6 lakh citizen service centers, and each one of them, or if not all of them, many of them can function as banking correspondents subject to certain eligibility criteria. The innovation of the POS machine, which has led to banking at the doorstep. And I must also mention that there are, as per the last survey that we did, nearly 6.5 crore establishments in the country, ranging unincorporated establishments. And around 2.5 crore of them are taking or getting banking facilities or loans. So that's the kind of mass base that we have. And I think the kind of institutional structure, the infrastructure, and I think the innovations that have been built around that, which is of course the JAM Trinity is part of that, is what has really led to this kind of expansion. And we are, I think, still scratching the surface because we are still talking of savings and loans. We need to deepen, we need to go into micro insurance, micro investments. So I think the path ahead is extremely positive.
Yeah, absolutely. And my own feeling is with the increasing per capita income levels, the commercial banks, though in the beginning they were feeling that we have opened so many accounts, incurred a certain cost, but the deposits that we have been able to mop up really are not serving us to overcome the cost. But increasingly with the per capita income and the widespread account opening that happened and the awareness that happened, especially during COVID, the direct benefit transfers that happened really made people think about it and use those instruments. I think the government also played a very prominent role in making it obligatory that if you want to avail these facilities, you have to have an account. Some of the insurance and social sector and social security schemes that they announced, I thought the government has been also, in a way, nurturing the whole scheme and taking it forward. Very, very positive. I still remember when we started the business correspondent schemes, I don't know if our former Deputy Governor Harun Khan is here, but he played a very important role sitting in Pune when he conceived of the idea of a business correspondent. We have gone so much way ahead of it now. We have institutional business correspondents. So the whole paradigm shift has taken place in that. The fintech has been granted lots of privileges, and fintech is, I think, making lots of roadmap into the whole financial inclusion drive and exercise. The Reserve Bank also played a very prominent role in nurturing this whole activity. I appreciate the fact that you have brought in the story of the priority sector in your observations, because when we started the priority sector in 70s, early 70s, our object was again that we reach out to the unbanked population and the MSMEs who can then play a role, a bigger role in this. I don't know if you would like to share some thoughts on MSMEs and fintech and the role of government in extending this.
Yeah. So a couple of things. One is on just to add to the role of government. I think one area where we've yet not scratched the surface, and this is also because these are all new programs, is a number of the ones that we are transferring funds directly into the bank accounts of different categories of people. PM Kisan is one which goes to farmers. Then you have a host of programs which each of the state governments are doing on the lines of Ladli Behna or Subhadra scheme, where again funds are going to women in rural and urban areas. And similar such funds transfer programs. And I think where the intervention or the innovation is now needed is to ensure that they build on and leverage the funds that will come to each individual household so that those funds get channelized into productive businesses or investments, along with either microfinance or micro loans from the financial sector. And I think that's an area, given the fact that these have really expanded over the past 3 or 4 years, provide an opportunity to further strengthen the micro enterprises. But just talking of the 6.5 crore unincorporated enterprises, the average loan per establishment of this is more than 50,000 rupees, 50,000 for each of the, obviously all of them are not taking, but this is the average which has come out. And obviously a lot of the employment also comes out of the unincorporated sector enterprises. They have a lot of requirement of skilling, both on the agricultural side and the non-agricultural side. And I think that's what I was mentioning earlier also on the focus need for skilling. And what is also helping is the fact that we just did a survey, the National Sample Survey, which brings out that the number of people who are using mobile phones now is 92%. So mobile phones are ubiquitous, Aadhaar is ubiquitous, and so are banking accounts which are ubiquitous, which are near 100% in each of the three. So that forms the backbone for ensuring that this kind of support can be given to the unincorporated sector enterprises.
Totally agree with you. And my own feeling is with the type of demographic dividend we are having in the country, we need to be creating nearly 7 million jobs every year, which is a big number. And this is probably going to come significantly from the rural areas through agro-processing and other industries. So it's obvious that the microfinance segment will have to contribute and reach out to these people. I've also noticed that to a great extent, the government has been pushing the mudra loans. The mudra loans are also at the small spectrum side, especially the Shishu loan is extremely small. Also found that the potential for job creation with that little amount is much more than very intensive, capital intensive industry that is set up. So my own feeling is in the days to come, because Viksit Bharat would mean full employment, female labor force participation also as much as possible, the male labor force participation at its fullness. This financing of these activities obviously will have to come significantly from our microfinance institutions. Would you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was just looking at the data which says, I was looking at the RBI data of 23. The share of NBFC MFIs has exploded if you look at the increase from 22 to 23. Now, NBFC MFIs have the largest share of the micro segment, which is crossed 40%. The banks are down to 34% and small finance banks at 17%. So obviously the growth is the maximum in this sector. There are some issues which I'm sure when fast growth happens, they need to be resolved, and I'm sure the regulatory aspects need to be looked at. But I would just suggest that there will be two areas, and keeping in view Viksit Bharat and what the next 25 years is there, which the Honorable Prime Minister has also said the focus will be on Gyan, Garib, Yuva, Andata and Nari, G-Y-A-N. And I think whether you call it the bottom of the pyramid or the middle or whatever, but it will be the opportunities will be in this because a lot of the government schemes will focus on providing additional liquidity to this sector. And you can already see that in all the programs. So on the focus would need to be to innovate and ensure that the funds which go to this segment of Gyan get effectively utilized, and I'm sure that's where the skills of the MFIs will come in. And the second, where I think over the next 25 years the focus will continue, is what again the Honorable Prime Minister has coined the acronym LIFE, Lifestyle for Environment, and that whatever initiative it would have to have a focus of a green focus. So whether it's electric vehicles, whether it's solar rooftop, whether it's harvesting, whether it's wash, and all these activities if it is within that ambit of life, and I think that's where a lot of government funding would go, and that would provide an opportunity for the financial sector to leverage that and focus. So, I mean, that's what I would say in terms of both on micro entrepreneurship and keeping the concept of Viksit Bharat in mind.
Absolutely. I would totally agree with you. The Prime Minister's concept of life also would bring in very, very environmentally friendly activities happening in rural areas and greater opportunities for funding it. So I would look at a complete revival of the rural area through the emphasis on life which the Prime Minister is making. And I also feel the time has come after the G20 presidency, when Prime Minister introduced the concept of life, and then he articulated it. And speaking about the circular economy and the role that the traditional Indian economy, the value system has, which its life concept, in a way rejuvenates the rural area. That's where most of India lives now. And after COVID, when you mentioned about the female labor force participation increasing in the rural areas, many women folk had gone back and all of them have yet not returned. So now that they're meaningfully engaged in the rural areas, some sources of finance has to reach them. And I think in that sense, the Prime Minister's vision is strengthening the scope of microfinance institutions in that area. I also think that the point that you have made in terms of skilling is very, very important. Because as you skill, the average wage goes up, your saving capabilities go up, and the cycle towards Viksit Bharat, where per capita income has to increase, also improves. I was wondering, you have been in the Ministry of Empowerment, and the microfinance institutions have greatly empowered our women. I remember when it initially started, the Prime Minister was mentioning about the card which the opening of an account would provide them. And that would give them great pride. I myself did some surveys in Tumkur, close to IIM Bangalore, where I used to teach. And I have seen that pride, they have the card in their hand. The women empowerment to the extent that she has an account of her own, that the business correspondent speaks to her. Many females became business correspondents themselves, especially if they were running a Kiryana store and things like that. Would you have something to add in terms of female empowerment, the feeling of empowerment which the microfinance institutions through the Jan-Dhan movement have brought about?
Yeah, I mean, I can just mention that I remember when I was an Aadhaar, and at various places we used to, hold camps to ensure that they have the Aadhaar card. I think I remember anecdotes that women transgender women talking, that the fact that I have an identity, if someone asks me, who am I have something to tell and I have some proof also to show.
Right.
Same thing with the mobile phone, the fact that a person has an individual mobile phone, the agency that it provides to that person is significant. And I think the same thing happens with a bank account. The fact that one can transact on their own, one doesn't need someone else to transact. It's the same kind of empowerment which 30 years back, I remember when we were in the field, we used to talk about literacy, that a person can sign on their own rather than using a thumbprint. So I think all these are in the journey of ensuring that a self-esteem enhancement, which I mentioned, that comes in when anyone has something which they can identify themselves as their own and not dependent on someone else. And I think microfinance institutions, the fact that NRLM has been so well received across the country, the fact that there are 1.44 crore self-help groups, and I noticed the next session, is on from the Ministry of my good friend is talking in that, Shailesh, and focusing on NRLM. And I think the MFI movement has contributed significantly to this, as have different aspects over the past few decades. Absolutely. And I can only say that I just hope that this, the focus and the growth that it has seen would continue in the coming few years, because it's extremely essential in whichever activity that we are talking of for Viksit Bharat. The contribution of financial sector strengthening is critical for that growth. And just to repeat, savings are just the first, credit is just the initial. We have a long way to go in micro insurance, micro pensions, micro investment. And I think that's the path that only the MFI movement can, working with the other stakeholders, and I'm sure they will come up to that.
I must thank you, Dr. Garg. This was absolutely sterling, the thoughts that you have shared with us. As I understand from you, you have given a task to Sa-Dhan that in the days to come towards Viksit Bharat for the next 22 years, do we have a roadmap for MFIs? Where would the NBFCs and MFIs sit in? Where would the self-help groups sit in? What would be the target? Means I have generally noticed the present regime, especially under the Prime Minister, they are very target oriented. As they joined and formed the government in 2014, they had a $5 trillion vision. As time passed by, they had a 2047 Viksit Bharat vision. I think in the context of this and what I hear from you, and I want to thank you for that, I think a roadmap would really play a very prominent role in guiding the next 22 years as to what should be the role of MFIs and the self-help groups, where would the expansion take place, what should be the coverage, and what percentage of businesses should be getting financed through the MFIs. This picture would then fit into the bigger picture of the financial sector reforms, which I think the FM announced in her budget speech, that they're thinking in terms of the financial sector development. And this comes, I think, after Narsimham Committee report, the two of them which we got, late 90s, which showed the roadmap for the commercial banks. And now because MFIs have become important, and they've become important, they've earned their right. They've delivered. They've shown it works. I think now's the time to have a roadmap which then fit into the bigger roadmap, and maybe next year and year after, we could then look at the roadmap and see, are we performing, and you are coming from the Ministry of Statistics, coming from you, as I perceive, I think is an excellent idea. I must thank you for that. I must thank Sa-Dhan for organizing this event and giving us this opportunity to come and share our thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for that very illuminating discussion. A huge number of things to take away, and we would like to thank our honorable guest, and may I request our honorable Sa-Dhan chairperson to kindly join us onto the stage, Mr. Paul Thomas, to kindly join us onto the stage and present a memento and a shawl. Thank you so much, sir. We'd like to present a shawl to Dr. Saurabh Garg. May I also request our honorable board member, Shri Mukul Jaiswal, to kindly join us onto the stage, presenting a shawl and a memento to Dr. Charan Singh. Thank you so much, sir, for that wonderful discussion. We are now being joined by Shri Mukul Jaiswal. And may I also request Mr. G.G. Maman to join us onto the stage for a group photograph to capture that in our lenses and, of course, in our memories. Our friends from press and media are quickly capturing this moment in their lenses. A huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. A number of things to take away from this very illuminating and very, very enriching discussion. Once again, a big thank you to our honorable guests for sharing their thoughts and valuable inputs with us. Thank you so much, sir, for doing the honors. Thank you once again.